So 1 to 2 shots prime is what the POH says. Mixture full rich and throttle as required. From a mechanic's point of view, and the way I've always been taught to start airplanes, and it seems to work almost every time, is 3 to 4 shots prime, mixture full cutoff, and then throttle just in maybe 1/8 of an inch. Just in from idle 1/8 of an inch. Crank the starter. As soon as you hear it start to run, jam the mixture in, and it'll start to find it. What it'll do is it'll go from almost flooded to that correct mixture, and it'll find itself, and you'll be able to bring it up from, you'll hear go 100 RPM, 200 RPM, 300 RPM, and come up and slowly come up to that 700 or 800 RPM range, and you'll be able to start it and have it just kind of come up nice and slowly. And then you can let it sit and warm up, 700 to 1,000 RPM for a minute or 2 minutes or so, and let the cylinders and the pistons and everything all start to get oil on them and lubricated and warm up. And what that does is it allows the clearances to start to go from the sloppy fit that it will be at, bone cold, to that tighter fit, and that stops the pistons from going like this in the skirts as they go up and down in the cylinder, and it stops it from making metal, because as soon as that piston starts to wobble as it goes up and down, it shaves off aluminum off the piston, it wears the rings unevenly, it just creates all kinds of wear in there that's unnecessary. So if you can keep it down at that low idle for the first minute or two of operation, and then bump it up to 1100 to warm it up, that's the best way for these engines to warm up. It's the absolute best thing you can do to make them last. The next thing in cold weather starting here is you often hear students or instructors or anybody sitting there, they're cranking the airplane again and again and again and again. Skytech says right, that's most of our plants have Skytech starters. They say right in the instructions for operation, 10 seconds of cranking, and then a 10 to 20 second cool down between attempts. So you shouldn't have to sit there and stay on the starter for 20 or 30 seconds. That's how we burn out starters. It creates too much heat, wears the brushes out, and it just is hard on them. If it's having that big a problem starting, we should know about it so we can do something about it. That's what it was happening with MBY. We swapped the mags and fixed it, and now it's been reported it starts on 2 to 3 blades. That's how they all should be starting. If it's a low battery on a cold morning, or if it's just a bone cold morning, it's probably going to take a little bit more to start, but it shouldn't be taking 3 to 4 cycles of the starter at 10 seconds or 20 seconds and wearing out the starter. So that takes care of most of our gas airplanes. TAE and TDI. The diesels, when they went down for course, they say cold weather. Obviously, diesels don't like cold weather to start in. We're all aware of they've got glow plugs, but they don't have spark plugs. They don't do all that kind of stuff. So the glow plugs heat up the cylinders because they just compress the gas and the fuel in the air until they get hot enough that they combust on their own. So diesels have glow plugs, so you'll preheat the cylinders with the glow plugs, and in cold weather they say you can do it 2 or 3 times. So turn the engine master on, let the cylinders heat up, turn the engine master back off, turn it back on again, and the glow plugs will go through another cycle, and it'll heat the cylinders up more. You can turn it off again, turn it back on. It'll once again heat the cylinders up even more, so that when you do go to crank it, the cylinders are already hot enough that air-fuel mixture that enters will be warm enough that it should combust a lot easier. So it'll stop being on the starter for that long and some of the starting issues that we get with that on cold days. Now the other thing is we're finding a lot of dead batteries, obviously, with the cold start on batteries, and that links back to the max 10 seconds cranking. So if you can't get it started right away, or you're just sitting on the starter cranking it for past 10 seconds, that starter, the longer it runs, the more current from the battery it's going to take. So if you sit there and you crank it for more than 10 seconds, instead of taking the 7 amps that it usually takes, as you sit on it longer and it heats up, it's going to do a 7, 10 amp draw, 20 amp draw, 30 amp draw, and it's going to start sucking more, because the hotter they get, the less efficient they are. So just sitting there holding on the starter and it not doing anything is just killing your battery even more. And the last thing one more thing. If you find a dead battery, or you find an airplane that won't start, like I say, report it. Let dispatch know, let me know, so we can get the thing charged so it doesn't just sit there not charged for the next guy to go out and discover it. And the last thing I can really think of is, if you fly an airplane, try and make sure it's tied down when you're done. Or you take it out and you do a pre-flight on it. Try and make sure it's tied down when you're done if you don't take it. Because we've had, with the windstorms we've been having and all that kind of stuff, we're trying to look at the end of the night, but let's face it, everybody's human and we all forget. So if we can all kind of jump in on the effort, and when we're done with an airplane, we make sure it's tied down, we run a lot less risk of damage due to wind. And that basically closes off what I've got to say.